Life is not always easy, and we as Christians will sometimes suffer. But with God, He will lead you through your journey from pain to praise. Known for their unique style that blends tight family harmony with their acoustic instruments, Grand Ole Opry members, the Isaacs, Lily, Ben, Sonya, and Becky have encouraged millions through their own trials, faith, and music. For Becky, the past year has been a whirlwind, surviving an automobile accident that took her off the stage after starting her solo project. Those songs pulled her through the tough times that hit number 4 on the Billboard Bluegrass chart. This is her story. This is today's Nashville. This is Faith. Becky, it is so good to see you again. I am so glad you were able to sit down with me to share what's been going on in your life.
What's been happening?
A lot. I've been following.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year.
It has been a crazy year. But before we get into that, I want to go back in your life. You're part of the famous Isaacs. What was it like growing up Isaacs?
Well, you know, I'm the baby of the 3 siblings that sing. It's interesting because my siblings from birth knew they wanted to be in music, but I was the oddball. I was the one that really wanted to be in the medical field, and I ran from music. It did not come as natural to me, or the desire did not come as natural to me as it did to them. So I always compared myself to them because it came easier for them, and I always struggled deep down inside, did God call me or did my dad call me? Because from the moment we were born, we could sing 3-part harmony. As soon as he discovered I could play the guitar, he put one in my hand. And so...
How old were you then?
Well, I started singing, honestly, about 3. Our first recordings, I was about 3. And we did our first trio record when I was about 7. But we sang on records when I was 5 and 6. And I started playing guitar at 11. Yeah.
Guitar at 11.
Mm-hmm. You just do it when it's a family thing.
Did you take lessons or did you just pick it up and start?
A little bit of both. The harmony came very natural, but the guitar, although I could feel it and understand it, my dad would show us the chords and help us through it. And fellow musicians that were in the Isaacs would pass the baton and show us things. And when it was our time to step up, they were very supportive. You know, our guitar player quit when I was about 11. And my dad had seen me play about 2 or 3 chords, and he put the guitar in my hand and he said, the next weekend, it's all me. And so I'd been playing a few chords behind the stage and off the side of the stage with a mic, and it was a lot of pressure. But, you know, that's the way my dad rolled back then. And it kind of put us in a place where we are today, where it takes a lot to catch us off guard, because when you grow up doing it and in all kinds of situations and scenarios, you just find a way to make it work.
Were you in Nashville at the time, or where did you grow up?
We grew up in Ohio, a little town called Mar, Ohio. It was about 30 minutes from Cincinnati, Ohio. And in 1992, we moved to Tennessee because our music had started to take off so much that we needed to be closer, but we were in the Knoxville area. Mm-hmm. And then slowly we moved to Nashville.
So did you spend your teenage years in Knoxville, or?
Yes, I was 17 when we moved to East Tennessee. My senior year, I had to move. So it was a tough year. No. It was a tough year, but so part of my teenage years was in Ohio, and then the rest of them were in East Tennessee.
So from there, 17, were you still thinking about medical school or the medical field, or did you know that maybe this was the path that God was leading you down?
It was always in my mind. I wanted to go to nursing school. And about 1992, we had our first #1 song. And at that time, you know, I was about 16. And by that time, our music started to take off. And it just wasn't possible for me to do both. Mm-hmm. And so I went to cosmetology school, so I would have something to fall back on should music not be friendly to us and we couldn't make a living at it. By the time I was 16, my family was very dependent upon me and what I did in the group. So it wasn't easy to not, I wasn't the one to be rebellious and kick against it. But eventually in time, I realized that God called me, and it's working all for good.
How did you get to Nashville?
I went through Crohn's disease, a severe case of Crohn's disease, for about 10 years when I was in my 20s up until 2011. And I was on about 20 different medications to stay alive. And I had a very rare form of Crohn's disease because it wasn't just my colon, my small bowel, my large bowel, but I had started to develop ulcers in the colon, and I had a severe skin and eye condition where I could not take a shower for 2 or 3 days at a time because my skin burnt so badly. And my eyes were really red all the time, painful, and the doctor said that I would probably go blind in both of my eyes. And so I was on 20 medications spiraling downward, chemotherapy, Humira injections. I was on 100 milligram steroids for years.
Did they know what it was causing it?
They actually were treating the symptoms and not able to give me a diagnosis until I went to the Mayo Clinic. And then they diagnosed me as Crohn's disease, but I had such a rare case of it. It was really even then questionable if that was the proper diagnosis. But in 2011, February 22nd, I walked into a holistic clinic in Nashville, Tennessee called Internal Balance. And it began to change my life because we began to detox bacteria and parasitic exposure. And as all of those toxins came out of my body, I began to heal. And quickly, the Crohn's just completely got better. And then eventually the skin and the eyes got better. And so I was coming to Nashville once a week on top of our 3 and 4 day schedule in East Tennessee. So it was getting really hard to come once a week to do the detox process. So in 2012, we decided it was time to come here to Nashville, where my brother and my sister already were living here. And recording made it easier, and being here for the holistic treatments. And so it's been almost 11 years now, and I'm 100% free of all those medications that used to keep me alive. I'm no longer considered a Crohn's patient. So God has done miraculous things in my life this far.
Now, were you married at this time?
Yes, ma'am. I was married and I had 2 children. At diagnosis with the Crohn's disease, my daughter was newborn and my son was 4. So about those 10 years, I was very, very sick. There were days I couldn't get out of bed and take care of my children. And we were traveling that time probably 230 days a year. And I would be the first on the bus to bed and the last to get out of bed. And I just was very, very sick. But the public did not know about it. I didn't make it known until God began to heal me in an unorthodox way at Internal Balance. And then I began to share with people, and it made a lot of sense to them because I was always so shy and usually kept my distance because I was so unhealthy.
I remember talking to you previously, and you were talking about your anxiety and being the youngest and having, your family to, when you went on stage. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, being on all those medicines, especially steroids, I was on 60 milligram steroids every day for 3 years. And you talk to somebody that has taken just a pack and how anxious they were. So a lot of that just made me so jittery and anxious that when I would walk on stage, I thought I was going to crawl out of my skin. I was so nervous, and I was always looking for the exit signs, like, how can I get out of here because I'm scared? And I'd be up at 2 or 3 in the morning scrubbing the floor because I can't sleep. So it became a battle of the mind, the process of overcoming the fear and anxiety that comes along with being sick and also struggling with your calling.
Well, you know what? God has taken you down a completely different path with your anxiety. I love what He is doing now, and we're going to talk about it when we come back.